Story 1. What happens if you take a box of laxatives and a box of Imodium? Story 2. Sometimes when I'm falling asleep, I get a strange sensation that I am tiny inside my body while my hands and arms feel enormous. I have always wondered if anyone else has experienced this, knows what this phenomenon is called, or can explain why it happens. Story 3. Lately I have been adding Reddit to my Google searches and find the answers I am looking for more easily. Story 4. I saw a Japanese cartoon about a girl who had a small animal on her shoulder. She had to save the world from a red demon. She was assisted by huge creatures that looked like potato bugs, roly-polies, or pill bugs, with about 20 eyes that were normally blue but turned red when angry. I would love to see it again, but I cannot find it. It makes me feel like I imagined the whole thing. Does anyone know the title? Story 5. Is there a name for when a song has a title that is usually long and has nothing to do with the song itself? For example, it does not relate to the subject matter of the song and is not a lyric. Story 6. Why does one of my cats lick the other but refuse to be licked back? I think it is because she is an asshole, but Google will not confirm it. Story 7. How is it that you can go an entire day holding your urine with little discomfort, but as soon as you insert your key into your front door lock, you must squeeze with all your might to keep the floodgates from opening? Story 8. How do women wear flats without socks in the summer? Do their feet get sweaty, blistered, or smelly? Story 9. Why don't fast food places have sauce menus? They're just like, what? 17 sauces do you want with that? And stare at you. Story 10. How do people cut their nails in jail? Do they give you scissors or nail clippers? Do you need to do it under supervision? Do you bite your nails? I have tried searching on Google but had little luck. Story 11. Why do some instruments have to transpose while others do not? Why did they not simply name the sounding pitch concert C instead of using transposition? Story 12. Finally. I hope I am not too late. This has been bothering me for years. In Houston, the large loaf of bread is cheaper than the small loaf, even though it is the exact same bread. Same ingredients, same taste, same slice size. The only differences are that the large loaf is longer, more slices, and costs less. This is the case at every grocery store I have seen in Houston. Kroger, Randall's, Target, and Walmart. The small loaf is always more expensive and has been for years. There is no reason to buy the small loaf. Even if you kept bread in a shortbread basket, it would be cheaper to buy the large loaf and discard a few slices. If it were cheaper to produce the large loaf, they would stop making the small loaves. It is the same bread. Help me. Story 13. This image is one of the default wallpapers included with Windows 10. It shows a green tent pitched in a forest beneath the Milky Way. Does anyone know where it was taken? I spent a couple of hours searching the other day but could not find out. Story 14. What movie does the quote come from? Come on, gypsies, let's ride. I had a teacher in high school who used it and said we would never find it. Story 15. Do all people, as they grow older, eventually start to hear phantom sounds like whooshing, whining, or ringing? Is this a natural part of aging, or do only some people experience it at any age, such as tinnitus? Story 16. I can do this strange thing. I honestly cannot explain it any better than that. I can make myself feel as if I am being electrocuted or as if I am falling. All I have to do is concentrate and I can make it happen. Does anyone know what this is called? I received so many replies that I cannot keep up with them. I mainly feel it in my hips and spine. Vaccinate your children and stay in school. Story 17. There is a song, perhaps by Bright Eyes, with a lyric that goes something like, you are mad at me for the things I did in your dreams, or I want to say sorry for the things I did in your dreams. Google could not help me. I just want to listen to the song. User Rippenfish identified the song as trusted by Ben Folds. Thank you, everyone. Story 18. If you fart in a jar, seal it tightly and put it on a shelf. Would you be able to smell it if you open the jar a month later, a year later, or 10 years later? Story 19. Does anyone have information about Project Oregon Trail, a classified wargame scenario from the 1960s that led the Pentagon to conclude that massive retaliation was a doomed strategy and thus contributed to the Third Offset Strategy and the Airland Battle Doctrine? I only know it exists because it was mentioned in a think tank presentation about Airland Battle that I watched, and it is nearly impossible to find anything about it because, 1. It is a classified nuclear wargame scenario, and 2. Internet searches are dominated by results about the early role-playing computer game. I would like to know what the analysis concluded. Story 20. In the late 80s, there was a series of Betamax tapes I found at my local library. They contained a show about spacefaring puppets portraying astronauts. Things I remember, there were several episodes, maybe even 2 seasons. They looked very creepy, especially around the eyes. In one episode, a dark entity was on the ship and the suspense terrified me. Update. Okay. I had to stop working and check it out quickly. It is definitely Terrorhawks. You restored a 30-year-old memory. Thank you. Update 2. Dr. Pink Cream not only found the series but the precise episode that gave me the chills. Thanks so much. Story 21. There was a video of a greasy old man pulling his mouth open to make a hideous goat-like noise. My husband and I can no longer find it. Can you find it on Reddit? Story 22. My dog's coat has started to smell like brownies in the last 2 months. His diet has not changed, and I have bathed him since then, but it still smells. I am not complaining because it is much more pleasant than typical dog odor. But can anyone tell me why? Update. It is his flea collar. I put it on him around the same time he started smelling like this. I cannot believe I did not think of it. Thanks for all the information, everyone. Here is a picture of my brownie boy, Mars. Story 23. What is the divorce rate for couples therapists? It's been bothering me for years. Story 24. What language consumes the fewest calories? For example, if reading War and Peace out loud in English burned 1,000 calories, would reading it out loud in Spanish, word for word, burn 1,300 calories? Story 25. Is it normal to see lines or excess coming from lights at night when you are driving, such as on your windshield? Story 26. What object is actually used to make the bite sound in cartoons? All I have seen are references to Foley sound effects, not the actual object used. Story 27. How do I create word art like the 2007 version of Microsoft Word in Word 2013? I missed the rainbow word art from my childhood. Story 28. Why does my cat demand running water from the bathroom sink to urinate and defecate? Google has left me feeling alone with my weird, water-obsessed cat. She always has clean, fresh litter that she will use if we are not around. But when we are home, she meows until we turn the water on for her. Please tell me she is not the only one. Story 29. How does consuming specific protein supplements such as collagen help with hair and nail growth? Do not all dietary proteins get broken down into individual amino acids or, at most, small peptides like tripeptides before absorption? Story 30. How old is too old to consider trying to be a runner or a production assistant on a film set to open a door to your dream career path? Asking for a friend. Update. Wow. I was not expecting this reaction. I have only just woken up and am going through the messages as best I can. Thank you to everyone for your replies. They are very helpful and I appreciate the support. Story 31. I once read that there is a term for how certain words gradually become offensive when they are used to describe people with intellectual disabilities. Originally, words like idiot and retarded were not offensive. They were medical terms for someone with limited cognitive function. But eventually people start using those terms as insults, so the medical term must be changed because it is inappropriate to call someone with Down syndrome an idiot. What is the term for this? I could probably look it up, but I have not had any luck. Story 32. What was the alcohol percentage of ancient Greek wines? Edit. Like a few people pointed out, the answer is easy to find on the English version of Google, but I was using the Dutch one. Thank you for the answers. Story 33. There was a cartoon in the 1990s. I do not remember much of it, but it featured a chick, an actual bird, with his parents. The antagonist was a fox who constantly wanted to eat the chick. One episode had a song that went, "Wings and drumsticks, drumsticks and wings. It is not polite to eat living things." Does anyone remember the name of this show? I think it would be at the obscurity level of The Wacky World of Tex Avery and Pompey Pete. Found it. It is a segment from Tex Avery called Maurice and Mooch. All credit goes to the Reddit user cstock77. Story 34. A British television commercial from the early 2000s, possibly the late 1990s. The setting is two men sitting on a bench. One speaks English and a Finnish man does not understand, repeatedly saying Finland. I cannot remember what it was advertising, and Google has not helped when I searched for it. Any help? Story 35. I saw an intriguing programming language on Reddit whose documentation was the code and which featured a web-based editor. What was it called and what is its current status? Story 36. Okay, here we go. Why can't human babies do anything at all? All other animal babies I can think of can at least do something. Many can walk soon after being born, which I understand is complicated for humans. Human babies also cannot crawl at first, which is somewhat understandable but less acceptable. They often cannot roll over, which is getting suspicious. But the real kicker is that they cannot even lift their own heads. What kind of nonsense is that? As far as I know, ape babies can at least grasp their mother while she walks. Human babies often scream and cry, and I have never seen an ape baby do that. This suggests that at some point we split off and human babies became less capable or ape babies became more capable, in my opinion. Not to offend any babies, but human infants seem to be the least useful compared with other animals, as far as I know. Somebody please explain. If you cannot explain, at least tell me about a different animal baby that is worse. Story 37. I am often curious about how popular certain songs from decades ago were in other countries. I am Australian. For example, I can use Google to see that a song that was huge here reached number 16 on the United States Billboard charts in 1994, but that does not tell me how many people out of 100 would instantly recognize it today. Thank you, everyone. There were some useful ideas and interesting discussions. I am curious because I take part in a song parody competition with mostly United States listeners, and song choice is always tricky for me unless I choose something that was a surefire global hit. It is not always easy to figure out by Wikipedia statistics alone. Story 38. Apart from Macau, where can one get free money from the government? I am asking because the Macau government gave everyone $10,000 this year. I mean a universal cash handout for everyone regardless of age, gender, or income. Macau is one of the few places that does this because its gross domestic product per capita is among the highest in the world. I am curious whether any other countries follow suit. For those asking about tax refunds, income tax rates in Macau are relatively low, 5 to 7%, and the Macau government gives a 60% tax refund. Water and power are subsidized. Education and healthcare are free. Story 39. I am nearsighted. Why do objects in my rearview mirror appear blurry without my glasses, as if they are far away, when the reflection is actually close to me? Story 40. If you have had a stroke, you are at higher risk of another stroke because the underlying blood vessel disease and risk factors that caused the first event remain present, and because the brain and circulation are left in a more vulnerable state. Why recurrence risk is higher. Persistent vascular disease. A prior stroke shows that atherosclerosis or other vascular disease is already present in the cerebral or extracerebral arteries, so the same process can produce new blockages or plaque rupture. Unstable plaque and thrombosis. Atherosclerotic plaques can be unstable and shed clots that travel to the brain. Cardioembolic sources. Ongoing heart problems, for example atrial fibrillation, can continue to produce emboli that cause repeated strokes. Shared risk factors remain. Hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol, smoking, and sedentary lifestyle continue to raise risk unless controlled. Prothrombotic and inflammatory state. Stroke can be associated with increased blood clotting tendency and inflammation that promote recurrence. Reduced cerebral reserve and impaired autoregulation. Damaged brain tissue and altered blood flow regulation reduce tolerance to new ischemic events. Incomplete or delayed secondary prevention. If underlying causes are not identified or risk factors are not treated, recurrence risk stays high. Typical recurrence rates and timing. The risk of another stroke is highest in the days to weeks after the first event. Population studies report several % risk in the first month. Overall estimates vary by cause and treatment, But many studies find roughly 5 to 10% risk of recurrent stroke in the first year and up to about 30% over 5 years, with wide variation depending on the underlying diagnosis and how well risk factors are treated. Scientific evidence and guidance. The Guideline for the Prevention of Stroke in Patients with Stroke and Transient Ischemic Attack by Kernan and colleagues, published in the journal Stroke in 2014, reviews recurrence risks and evidence-based secondary prevention strategies. Large population studies such as the Oxford Vascular Study have documented substantial early recurrence risk after stroke and transient ischemic attack and have quantified how recurrence varies by cause and by timing. Clinical trial and guideline evidence shows that effective secondary prevention, blood pressure control, antithrombotic therapy as appropriate, cholesterol lowering with statin therapy, smoking cessation, diabetes control, detection and treatment of atrial fibrillation, and carotid revascularization when indicated, substantially reduces the risk of recurrent stroke. If you want, I can list specific studies with full citations or summarize prevention measures and expected risk reductions. Story 41. Are there any surviving pieces of ancient Greek clothing still around? I have tried searching online for variations of this question but cannot find an answer. Story 42. Can somebody freaking explain where the wild things are? Cheese and rice, that shit just weirds me out when he's attacking the dog at the beginning. Story 43. Can we do this thread once a month? This is derisively fantastic. Story 44. I moved to Japan and have no idea how to fix my network latency in for honor. Story 45. This is not an answer to the question but is related. I had 2 steer calves with warts on their scrotums a few weeks ago, so I searched online to see if other people had the same issue and what they did. Searches for terms like steer scrotal warts returned many unwanted images of human genital warts, including many accidental explicit photos. We took the calves to the veterinarian to have the warts removed, but the internet search did not help. Laughing out loud. Story 46. Why is it that a high-definition multimedia interface connector is either an output or an input but never both? In what ways is a universal serial bus connector different? Story 47. How can I compare 2 numbers encrypted with homomorphic encryption using the Microsoft Simple Encrypted Arithmetic Library? Story 48. Where is that video of a seagull stealing a cell phone from the beach set to run by AWOL Nation? Story 49. I have been looking for the theme song of Star Trek. The Next Generation played at half speed. Last I heard, it was performed at an awards ceremony. Cannot find it anywhere, not even on YouTube. I found one that had been slowed by 400%, but it is not the same. I should add that it was orchestrated at half tempo, not digitally altered. Story 50. What does the Portuguese word "cudish" mean? I'm not sure about the spelling. It's usually used as an exclamation, similar to "oh fuck." My family uses it all the time, but no one can answer when asked its actual meaning. Story 51. When you read a newspaper, you tend to believe the stories. If there were a story about you, you would know which parts were false and become angry at the paper for being inaccurate. But as soon as you turn the page, you again assume the words are accurate. I once read that this is a known phenomenon or some sort of bias, but I do not know its name. Story 52. Finding information on episodes of the television show episodes. It is a very frustrating Google search. Story 53. At the Olympics and the World Cup, someone in the crowd often waves an Israeli flag when the camera pans to them, even if no Israeli athlete or team is competing. Why is that? Is that person a professional flag waver? Story 54. How do 9-banded armadillos mate? I read that they are the only animals other than humans and bonobos that mate in the missionary position, but when I tried to confirm that, I ended up in a loop. All the published sources for this information lead back to an article called "Armadillos Make Me Smile a Lot" in Audubon magazine. I called the author and he said he got the information from a random leaflet a former leper had collected that is now on display at the National Hansen Museum, a former leper colony. I called the San Diego Zoo and Research Laboratories. No one seems to have ever seen a 9-banded armadillo mating. It has been 4 years since I first went down this rabbit hole, and I still search occasionally for new published information, but all I can find is that claim without reliable sources, and pictures and video of 6-banded armadillos mating. It may sound ridiculous, but it is true and has been driving me crazy for years. I will send $10 via Venmo to anyone who can provide photo or video evidence of 9 banded armadillos mating. Story 55. Do people from Middle Eastern countries who read right to left forget that and try to read things the way they would at home when they are in places that read left to right? Story 56. I asked this on Reddit and searched for it several times without success. Apparently, Japanese has a word for the feeling of regret and disappointment you experience at a restaurant when the food arrives and you realize you would prefer the dish someone else ordered. I read about this in an in-flight magazine from Japan Airlines on my way to Japan in early 2009. The article was about words that exist only in a single language, such as the Norwegian word for shoving someone's face in the snow. Story 57. Animated short film shown on home box office between movies during the 1970s or 1980s. No dialogue, only eerie music. It depicts 3 people leaving Europe for the New World in a ship. One carries a gun, another a Bible, and I cannot remember the third. They take over the New World, and things go badly. Later, the same 3 figures are in a spaceship, and the story repeats on an alien world. Does anyone remember this, know what it is, or know if it is available to view online? Story 58. What defines a biscuit in the United Kingdom? It is not always a cookie, not always a cracker, and it is never the type of bread from the southern United States. Story 59. This is actually a good question. The AskReddit subreddit seems to have gotten so far into memes and surveys that simple questions people on Reddit could and would like to ask do not get asked here. Why is that, AskReddit? Story 60. I heard from someone, I think it was a marriage counselor, that 90% of divorced men quit or lose their jobs within a year. Every time I search online, I find material saying job loss can lead to divorce. Not that divorce causes job loss. If anyone can share an article or study reporting the percentage of men who quit or are fired after a divorce, I would appreciate it. My searches so far turn up only advertisements for divorce lawyers and studies about how unemployment increases the risk of divorce. Story 61. I have had this question in my head for ages and could never find the answer. Today I hope I will get it. Why does music sound slower after working out? Almost every time I have a good workout, music afterward sounds about 1/4 the speed it did before. Is this a real phenomenon or am I imagining it? Edit. Does this phenomenon have a name? If not, I will call it Deadeye. Story 62. Refer to the No Stupid Questions subreddit if anyone has these kinds of questions. Story 63. I have been trying to find a video for a few years and hope to find it in one of these threads. I believe it is an Australian public service announcement that warns children to be careful about sending inappropriate content on their cell phones. In the video, a man wears a cell phone costume and speaks as if he is the traumatized phone of a teenager. He recounts how it started and how he became increasingly distressed by what his owner sent. It appears to end with him receiving a new text, becoming upset, and refusing to participate. I use several Australian public service announcement videos in my classroom, but I cannot find this one again. Story 64. Last week I was in Athens, Greece. Walking down the street, I glanced into the window of a restaurant. 4 men in their 20s sat around a table with drinks in hand, laughing and celebrating. All 4 were bald on top, possibly shaved, and they had identical bandages around their heads. The bandages ran from ear to ear horizontally across the back of the head, forming a half-moon shape. They were quite thick, but I could still see blood beginning to soak through them. What was going on? Is there a religious ritual or gang initiation that requires a partial scalping? I am not from Greece, so perhaps this is a cultural practice I have never heard of. It seems unlikely that all 4 could have been injured in exactly the same way by accident, but I cannot think of a reason for all 4 to be cut there deliberately. The fact that they appeared to be celebrating whatever had happened makes it even more puzzling. Story 65. I'll tell you what. People enjoy wading through a random collection of eclectic and interesting stuff. I am enjoying it, at least. I thought it would get downvoted to hell and back. But now I have all kinds of things to read. Thanks, Reddit. Story 66. How do I convert a portable document format file to a Microsoft Word document without buying expensive software? Story 67. God, I hope someone has the answer. Does the CEO of Ingvar Kamprad Elmträd Gunnerid sit on an Ingvar Kamprad Elmträd Gunnerid chair? Does he have an Ingvar Kamprad Elmträd Gunnerid desk? It would be understandable if he does not, since they do not make high-end manager chairs. Is his house entirely Ingvar Kamprad Elmträd Gunnerid furniture? I have to know. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.